Nearly 300 activists and lab coats signed an open letter to Spotify calling for it to stop Joe Rogan from spreading anti-vax misinformation after he hosted virologist Dr. Robert Malone, who called vaccination program a mass formation psychosis. In this letter signed by nearly 300 activists and lab coats, they want Spotify to censor Dr. Robert Malone, calling for Spotify to implement a misinformation policy. But it's not just the scientists and doctors that are calling for the censorship of Dr. Robert Malone. Today also, President Joe Biden called on the big media tech giants to censor misinformation on their platforms regarding the vaccine.
I make a special appeal to social media companies and media outlets. Please deal with the misinformation and disinformation that's on your shows. It has to stop. COVID-19 is one of the most formidable enemies America has ever faced. We've got to work together, not against each other.
This is the problem with the state of the media today, the narrative being sold to us by the current administration and Dr. Fauci. What misinformation are they actually talking about? Because the only people that have actually been lying are Dr. Fauci, the mainstream media, and the administration themselves. Before you think that I'm some kind of conspiracy theorist, I'm not saying that the coronavirus is not real. I have already been infected and I am vaccinated. But what I am saying that the narrative that is being sold to us is a bunch of lies. First, they tried to tell us that masks were not effective. Then they told us that masks were effective. Then they told us that the only solution that we had to this problem was to get vaccinated. And they incentivized us to get vaccinated, saying that if we got vaccinated, we could return back to our normal lives. So I got vaccinated. But now here in California, you can't dine indoors without being vaccinated. I cannot go back to work without being vaccinated. They also called it a conspiracy theorist, and they slandered you with the worst slander possible today, calling you a Trump supporter if you even hinted that the virus could have leaked from the Wuhan lab. But now today we see that's actually being taken seriously, and the Biden administration has started an investigation into the lab leak theory. None of this would be possible without the overwhelming influence of the mainstream media over the American citizen. This is exactly why Dr. Matthias Desmet makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see this.
In a society, and these conditions are as important as the media itself. But that doesn't take away, without mass media, you cannot create mass formation or crowd formation at a scale as we experienced it now, and as a scale as it has been experienced shortly before the Second World War in Nazi Germany and in the first part of the 20th century in the Soviet Union. You need mass media to create a mass phenomena at that scale. That's true, yes.
You are a psychoanalytic psychotherapist. You're a lecturing professor at Ghent University in Belgium, and you specialize in the mechanisms of mass formation and totalitarian thinking. Is that correct?
I'm a professor in clinical psychology at the Ghent University, and I also have a master's degree in statistics. But in this crisis, I've been taking the perspective of mass psychology, yes, indeed. In the beginning of the crisis, I have been studying the statistics and the numbers, and actually I noticed that they were often blatantly wrong.
But if 40% in some hospitals, 40% of the people who have COVID don't necessarily have problematic COVID. They're there because they got in a car accident. They're there because, right. They bumped their head. And they're being included as in the hospital with COVID. That number seems kind of misleading.
Yeah, I agree.
Things need to exist or need to be in place if you want large-scale mass phenomena to emerge. And the first thing is that there need to be a lot of socially isolated people who experience a lack of social bond. The second one is that there need to be a lot of people who experience a lack of sense-making in life. And the third and the fourth condition is that there need to be a lot of free-floating anxiety and a lot of free-floating psychological discontent. So, meaning anxiety and discontent that is not connected to a specific representation. So it needs to be in the mind without the people being able to connect it to something. If you have these four things, lack of social bond, lack of sense making, free-floating anxiety and free-floating psychological discontent, then society is highly at risk for the emergence of mass phenomena. And these four conditions existed shortly before the corona crisis. There was like an epidemic of burnout. Over 40 to 70% of the people experienced their jobs as completely senseless. This is described in the book Bullshit Jobs by this professor of Harvard, of whom I always forget his name. He died.
This comes from basically European intellectual inquiry into what the heck happened in Germany in the 20s and 30s. You know, very intelligent, highly educated population, and they went barking mad. And how did that happen? The answer is mass formation psychosis. When you have a society that has become decoupled from each other and has free-floating anxiety and a sense that things don't make sense, we can't understand it, and then their attention gets focused by a leader or a series of events on one small point, just like hypnosis, they literally become hypnotized and can be led anywhere. And one of the aspects of that phenomena is the people that they identify as their leaders, the ones typically that come in and say, you have this pain and I can solve it for you. I and I alone, okay, can fix this problem for you, okay? Then they will follow that person through, it doesn't matter whether they lie to them or whatever. The data are irrelevant. And furthermore, anybody who questions that narrative is to be immediately attacked. They are the other. This is central to mass formation psychosis. And this is what has happened. We had all those conditions. If you remember back before 2019, everybody was complaining, the world doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. And we're all isolated from each other. We're all on our little tools. We're not connected socially anymore, except through social media. And then this thing happened and everybody focused on it. That is how mass formation psychosis happens. And that is what's happened here. Now there's ways to get out of it. Matthias's recommendation.
I just started this YouTube channel because there's all this information that I want to get out there that YouTube and the mainstream media and the other tech giants are trying to censor. And I think it's very important for it to be heard. But I honestly wonder how long these videos will stay up, because after the president's comments today, asking for big tech to censor this information, I don't know for how long they'll continue to allow us to voice our opinion. So in my opinion, what is Dr. Robert Malone guilty of? What is Joe Rogan guilty of? What is Peter McCullough guilty of? What are all these other people, including Rand Paul and everyone who is questioning right now the vaccine mandates, guilty of? Wanting freedom, for having ideas. It's just strange to me how far we've come, where you can't even have a difference of opinion without being marginalized by the other side. And this is not a blue versus red argument. This should not be a bipartisan issue. But this is what it has become because the administration has weaponized the media to push a narrative. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Obviously, you can go on the Daily Mail and you can read these articles for yourself and come up with your own opinion. Don't forget to leave me a comment below letting me know what you think. All right, guys, have a great day.